Parliament is resumed. The Honourable Member for West Bay South continuing his debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think, Mr. Speaker, your instruction was 2:15. So since we've passed that, I'm going to try to make this more concise so that we can try to leave.
I see Monday coming.
I know. No. Let me try to get out of that. Let me try to get out of that. Only one other point that I want to emphasize, even though I agree with all of the clauses of the bill, that I really do hope persons take up is the older persons tribunal, to be able to hear and determine complaints. That is now going to be part of the enforcement along with the other provisions that are actually now offenses in terms of abuse and neglect of our seniors. I hope that that tribunal is one that is active if it needs to be. If there isn't any abuse or neglect and it's bored, that's fine. But if there is, and people have to be brave enough to report, and as the responsible minister pointed out, mandatory reporters are members of Parliament. And if you see it, call it out, make the determination, because that's what that tribunal is there for, to add more teeth. Please use it, public, if you need it. Very quickly, Mr. Speaker, I want to take one moment to thank the persons who especially move this legislation forward. As thanked already, but I do want to say it for myself. As the chair of the Older Persons Council, Honorable Lucille Seymour, it was a pleasure engaging with the council. It was a pleasure attending the meetings with the council, to actually see us move from what was concept and thought and to have legislation to debate on the floor is no easy feat. Yourself, your deputy, Ms. Alice Mako, and all the rest of the council members pass on their thanks. And you two in particular, who were part of the legal steering committee that could connect the views of the council with those on the legal steering committee, that's where really the magic happened. The Chief Officer, Tamara Ebanks, the DCO, Trevor Gibbs, and all of the ministry staff in the policy areas, all of the departments who also contributed, and these provisions, as usual, are not easy to draft, singling out Darlene Glidden and Michelle Neblett for their legislative council expertise. We could not have done that in these advanced provisions without you. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, to close, and this will be a point that I would no longer have to make in relation to the bills that will follow this debate, is to reemphasize the plea in the next meeting, or the next administration, in the next budget of 26-27, to prioritize social development. If we don't critically examine population growth, amount of persons becoming citizens, healthcare costs, not just how to pay for them, but their root causes, the ministry staff can give the current minister studies that show it's not necessarily the health service that's the issue, it's the other stress on people. Income security, social protections, living conditions, those are what contribute to health problems. If we don't get serious about housing in the country, to look for those modular homes, to get planning to agree, yes, there is procurement issues that surround housing repairs, but it's simple math. If the TP is 375 and it's about 50 grand to fix a home, that's 7 homes. And even with the million that the current Honorable Premier found, that's 20 homes, because it's too expensive. We've got to be able to find a way to build in a more cost-effective way. Agree those planning requirements. In some of these cases, the homes for our seniors are old wooden houses that if it cost 100 grand to fix, why don't we just knock it over and have a hurricane-rated modular home that actually lasts their lifetime and then could be passed on, than to go back to fix the same house 3 years later again. If we don't look for those innovative solutions and wrap resources in the next budget around these pieces of legislation, we're going to be right back here with more cost over and over. So my point to the current minister is not to knock any of the initiatives that he's going to try to do while the term remains. It's more so to say that the speaker knows what you're going through, trying to find those workarounds when he was the minister. I know what you're going to try to find the workarounds as the minister. But the challenge for us, should we be reelected, is to make social development a priority in the 26-27 budget. It's not to knock you now. You'll get some things done. But those are workarounds. They're not really wrestling the problem to the ground. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I think we could all commend this legislation for our seniors with advanced protections and enhancements and all the rest of the social package to this honorable House for passage. They're long overdue, but they'll need the resources in the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other wish? The Honourable Member for Bordentown West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in advance of my speech, I sent 3 documents to you in the event that I may read from them, but at least you would have copies in advance, just in case.
Read selectively from them.
Yeah, not all of them, selectively, sorry. So
What a
just in
relief.
case, I do. Mr. Speaker, I rise to lend my support to the amendments being made to the Older Persons Act. I want to thank the members of West Bay South and the Honorable Deputy Premier from Georgetown Central for their contributions and effort so that this bill could be presented to Parliament today. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank the many public servants that work with the elected representatives to once again move this ball down the field. As I said before, not every single time you go down the field, we're going to score a goal. But the most important thing is to keep the ball moving forward and in a positive direction so that we can improve the quality of life for our people. Mr. Speaker, I want to use this opportunity to highlight several areas or a few areas that are important to me as we look at this bill. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, is the shift in demographics. Mr. Speaker, as per the 2021 census, the Caymanian population was 36,808, of which 12,790 persons were above the age of 50. That was 3 years ago. Another 1,400 should have at least reached 50 by now. I know, as I was one of them, to bring the total to 14,190, which coincidentally is in line with the statistics of the Elections Office as of the 1st of October 2024. Mr. Speaker, since the time of that census, we have added 2,647 persons to the Caymanian numbers. In 2021, we added 590 versus via grants of Caymanian status. In 2022, The number was reduced to 523. In 2023, we further reduced the number down to 266. However, Mr. Speaker, in 2024, the number went up to 1,268, which brings the total amount of persons to 39,455. Again, Mr. Speaker, that number is also in line with the 39,897 reported in the 2024 Labor Force Survey done by the Economics and Statistics Office. Mr. Speaker, the 2021 census also highlighted 3 issues that we should be aware of. 1, the average age of the entire population was 44. 2, the average age of Caymanians was 40. And 3, the average age of non-Caymanians was 49. I raise that issue to highlight the fact that there is a strong possibility that a vast number of status grants are being given to persons who are quite up there in age. 3 years ago, the average non-Caymanian was 49. What do we think it is today, 3 years later? I raise that issue to highlight the importance of the second area that I want to touch on, which is dignity. Mr. Speaker, under the current law as it stands before these amendments, the word dignity is only mentioned twice in the entire legislation. And in both places, it is only in the interpretation section, or to the layman in the public, that's where we list all our definitions. However, this amendment adds the word dignity 3 more times. And more importantly, it had the word dignity in an area that deals with the function of what the council is supposed to be focusing on, the dignity of our people. Mr. Speaker, when I think about dignity, I think the most important dignity that we can have is financial dignity. That is our people being able to look after themselves. And Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, when we were putting together the first budget after the election, and the member for West Bay South touched on it earlier in his contribution, we saw the trend where there was an aging trend. And the government at the time recognized that and started looking at efforts that we could do to basically make our people's lives better, recognizing that we do have an aging population that was getting older. Mr. Speaker, I've always spoken about that the only way to grow any economy is to grow the middle class. And 2 basic things that you need to grow the middle class is availability of credit and availability of access to capital. In other words, you give our people the tools where they can either form a business, start a business, and also, if needs be, borrow to help. But for whatever reason, Mr. Speaker, there's a growing trend where we are focused on debt and worried about borrowings, and you heard, different type of things as if though debt is bad and so forth. And nothing is wrong with anyone going into debt. Everyone has debt. People have debt. They have mortgage. Mortgage is debt. But is it bad to have a house? So does that make debt bad? And we do, Mr. Speaker, rightfully focus on, I guess, the government's credit standing. But I beg to ask the question, Mr. Speaker, what's the use of having good credit if you're not using it? Mr. Speaker, somebody come to you, you want to help them, people going hungry. But I can't help you, but if there's any good news, I got good credit. Mr. Speaker, people have nowhere to live, but guess what? We got good credit. Mr. Speaker, people sleeping on the beach. Don't matter. We got good credit. People can't afford food. We got good credit. People can't afford gas. We got good credit. People can't afford utilities. We got good credit. Mr. Speaker, one of the things when I'm in a previous political position, when I was tasked to do something about it as Minister of Finance, I approached the Caribbean Development Bank. We had meetings with them. They came to Cayman, and I think I've sent up there, Mr. Speaker, the aid memoir, one of the documents I've sent you. And for the record, Mr. Speaker, you know what? I'm going to table this document to the House. Yeah, I'll table it. I have extra copies here somewhere. Here you go, Sarge. And the reason I'm tabling this document, Mr. Speaker, I want the Caymanian people to know that some of us was not asleep at the wheel. So, and other members, I think I may have extra copy here. Minister Brian, sorry. Here you go, Sarge. I can give Minister, Deputy Premier this one here for his, thank you. Since he's the Minister of Responsibility, thank you. And this was the memorandum that they sent us. I'm just going to touch on 2 brief points on it. One was the mission objective, where it says to discuss and familiarize Caribbean Development Bank staff with the development priorities and challenges faced by the Cayman Islands, with a focus on A, agriculture and food security, B, affordable and eco-friendly housing solutions, low income, and C, small business development. And the rest of the document, Mr. Speaker, speaks about other issues. And I just want to get down to the part 5 that basically speaks about strengthening the Cayman Islands Development Bank mortgage provision. And it says CDB will finance a technical assistance project for a diagnostic review and restructuring of the CIDB and an appraisal report for a mortgage line of credit in the amount of US $100 million to meet about 60% of outstanding demand for housing by low to lower middle income Caymanians. At that time, Mr. Speaker, we were negotiating a rate of about 4.75%. And the view was we were looking at our Caymanian population above the age of 60 that had mortgages, and they would have been coming up closer to the age of 65. They would have had a lot of equity build up, and we knew interest rates was rising. And the plan was to borrow that money at 4.75% and lend it to them at 5.25%, as opposed to the 8, 9, and 10% that some of them were paying. So as people were getting ready to retire into the golden age, Mr. Speaker, we would have allowed our people to have basically borrowed against a much lower rate and would have been able. We could have easily have helped hundreds of families with this money. And you know, Mr. Speaker, the part that was really the scariest of all in this is that when you look at the report that was tabled earlier this week, the government's third quarter financial report, that $100 million US, the impact on our net debt, which was reported at 5.4%, and the law allows us to go to a maximum of 80% of that number. That number can go as high as 80%. As of the end of September, 30th of September, that number was 5.4%. And had we borrowed that money to help our people, Mr. Speaker, that net debt ratio would have moved to a whopping 10%. That's what it would have moved it to, 10%. Still well below the 80% allowed by law. So then I asked the question, what's the use of having good credit if we're not going to use the money to help our people? Mr. Speaker, I want to give Jack his jacket. One of the best motions in this parliamentary session that I've seen actually came from the leader of the opposition. I give his jacket when he spoke about one way of actually increasing the housing available to our people by offering government guarantees. That was something we look at. And I remember the night with the confusion, because was the confusion of the vote and everything else. because I guess at the time when it was being proposed, I don't think anyone understood the technical part of it thoroughly in the sense of that it was really a good motion. And I've said it to the deputy, well, at the time he was the deputy leader of the opposition. I've said it to him that it was a good motion. But this is what it is there for. And you know, Mr. Speaker, I just want you to indulge me a little bit, because there's one public servant I want to give credit to that we sometimes take for granted, and you mostly will see this person at Finance Committee with answering questions, and that is the Financial Secretary, Ken Jefferson. Mr. Speaker, the member for West Bay West would recall when he was over the barrel and the UK would not approve his budget without the FFR being in place. And he basically sent Mr. Jefferson off to the UK to go and negotiate the FFR. And in fairness to Mr. Jefferson, when you do read the Public Management and Finance Act and you look at some provisions of the FFR, he did a pretty good job in the sense of giving us the room to help ourselves in many regards. And you know, Mr. Speaker, yesterday when we were looking at the same mortgage protection fund, and we're looking at ways in which we can help our people as they're getting closer to retire. Most of our older people are seniors. One of the things I will tell anyone why I like the current Premier is that she has a social conscience. She understands the struggles of people. She understands the needs of people. And at the end of the day, I think it's safe to say, understand that it makes no use of having good credit if you're not going to use it to help your people. I would say that much. And yesterday when we were talking about the mortgage company, she said she was willing to find $3 million and to see what she can do to help in terms of the housing and everything else. And I said, Premier, $3 million? I'm actually looking $300 million. That's what I'm looking for. Because I want to reverse mortgages. We cannot sit down and talk about these things of helping our people and giving our people dignity, giving our people financial dignity without giving them access to capital or giving them access to credit. And the scary part about it, Mr. Speaker, if we were to go out and get the $300 million to help our people, that 5.4% net debt that we reported at the end of September would be increased to 21.9%. Again, well below the 80% limit. So then I ask the question again, what's the use of having good credit if we're not going to use it to help our people and give them their dignity? Because at the end of the day, the only dignity you can have is financial dignity. And as I said many times before, don't care what it is you want to do. Don't care how much you care. It still takes cash to care. Not hope, not thoughts, not prayers, cash. That's what it takes. And that is the only way in which we're going to help our people. So I go back to the member of West Bay South when he came and he made the case. At that time, the government was running a deficit when we came in right after COVID. We knew things were tight. But we could not sit down at the time as the government and not help the people that we knew needed help when we knew what the challenges were. Mr. Speaker, one of the things, as I said in my motion yesterday, where I decided to use the term annual fee, 2% annual fee on properties owned by foreigners. And during the time, as I said, that I know that part wasn't going to fly. But what I wanted the Cayman public to understand when that part was rejected was simply this. Foreigners are not going to be the persons that are going to be paying for your health care. Clearly. It is something that we will now have to find a way to pay for ourselves. And if we're going to sit down and help our people meaningfully as they get older to have their dignity, then we need to start putting the tools in place to help our people. And that is pretty much what it is that we want to get down to. Mr. Speaker, the last year I want to touch on, and just about every time we have a parliamentary session, we are tabling reports, we're tabling reports, we're tabling reports. But those reports mostly have, 99.9% of those reports have one thing in common. And the member for Georgetown East would understand what I'm talking about. What reports do is report on what happened. There is nothing that nobody can do to go back and change what is in those reports, because it is something that has already happened. But what we can do when we read those reports is learn from those reports and try to predict the future. Last year, Mr. Speaker, when I brought the motion to set up the Fuel Select Committee, I remember clearly saying to the members of this honorable House that the Arab world decided they wasn't riding with Biden, and they went jack up the fuel prices over the summer to make sure everybody feel it, get ticked off at the government, and vote the Democrats out. When you see people in the U.S. were complaining about their light bills in the summer, and my cousin in Miami, or well, Coconut Creek to be exact, whose mortgage payment did not increase one bit, despite 8 interest rate rises, didn't complain one bit, her mortgage didn't move. She was complaining about her light bill. And she joined thousands of other people, or I would say millions in the Caribbean and elsewhere, that was screaming about their light bills last summer. We knew it was coming. We set up the committee to hopefully we could have maybe did a few little things to get ahead of it. It didn't happen. So now, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to say something right now. Why I'm pushing this issue and belaboring this issue. And if there's one thing that our people have come with a history of knowing, if I did know. Well, Mr. Speaker, the other one I want to put out there is this one I sent to you. And it says, U.S. October budget deficit jumps $257 billion, hand in hold to Trump. Mr. Speaker, the start of the U.S. financial year is October 1st. It runs from October 1st to September 30th. And I just want to read this first part here from Reuters. It says, total U.S. budget deficit jumped nearly fourfold, $257 billion in October, a figure inflated by one-off factors, the Treasury Department said on Wednesday, in a report that started off a new fiscal year with a big hole to be turned over to President-elect Donald Trump in January. The Treasury said the October deficit was up 287% from the $67 billion deficit in October 2023, but calendar adjustments and benefit payments had cut that month's deficit nearly in half. So the first fiscal year, or the first month in the United States government fiscal year, they start off with $257 billion deficit. Why am I raising that point? Mr. Speaker, we always look at the Fed rate and the rate that the Fed pays the different banks when they move in the Fed rate, and that's the rate we look at. But there's another market out there, Mr. Speaker, that also impacts that market, or I should say, have an impact on that market, and that is the U.S. government. The U.S. government also goes out and buys bonds to fund their deficit to basically meet their needs. So the U.S. government actually does that also. And when the U.S. government needs to go out and buy these kind of bonds, it means that there's an increase in demand. And we all know what happens when demand goes up, price goes up, interest rate goes up. Which then brings me, Mr. Speaker, to the last document that I sent your way that says, the headline reads, how China could weaken the U.S. dollar. China, Mr. Speaker, did something last month that they have not done in quite a while. And in the interest of time, I won't read it, but I'll make it available to members. But basically what it did was China decided to go out and issue a bond. But they did not issue a bond in their currency. They actually issued a bond in U.S. dollar currency. In other words, now, China is now competing directly with the US government in terms of buying bond. And the location that China used to actually raise that bond is Saudi Arabia. Again, why is that important? I won't get into petrodollar, but for those of you who are familiar, because I've spoken about the petrodollar issue already, that is something that is there. But in a nutshell, they're looking to put a hurting on the US economy in terms of making it more expensive for the US government to go and basically borrow money. What do you think is going to happen to interest rates when it is more difficult for the US government now have to compete with China for money? It means there's a possibility that rates may go up. Will it happen? I don't know what Trump is going to do, because I don't think anybody knows what Trump is going to do. But the question that we need to be focused on is, what are we going to do? Are we going to say to our people as they get ready to retire now that we're going to have another trade war with the US, interest rates may end up going up, all kinds of issues may happen? What's going to happen to their monthly payments? What happens to their monthly commitments? Are we willing to put our people at risk? Are we going to sit there and say, boy, we can't do nothing because this is the way things are, when we know we can do things from now? This is what it is about. And it is safe to say now, while we may refer to this as an older person's bill, we might as well call it a national bill, because with the aging population that we have, this is us. This ain't a young people country, this is an older people country, this is us. And this bill needs to make sure that we have the dignity. Remember West Bay West talked about it when he said that he realized what he was preparing for is where he reached now. How much of us think we're far behind? Do we think we're insulated? So at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the members from West Bay South and Georgetown Central, the Honorable Deputy Premier, my good friend, for bringing this issue forward. But I'm asking us, please, for the love of Christ, let's not just go through another exercise of getting things done. Let us use the information that we have and really start to put in the tools in place that our people need. And at the end of the day, and I'm going to tell you straight up, Economics 101, the only people that really pay tax in a country is the middle class. Poor people don't pay it because they can't afford to pay it. And rich people don't pay it because they own all the businesses, and all they do, tax the cost of doing business, they put it in their price. It's part of the price package for them. That ultimately we, the people, pay when we buy the goods. So this, again, is a step in the right direction. As I said, we're not going to score a goal every time we go down the field. But our objective of this parliament is to move the ball forward. I recognize we're coming now to the end of this parliamentary session. Probably about another 8 weeks or so, if that much. But for those that are coming, we're looking again to seek re-election. And for those that are out there looking to get inside here, I'm going to tell you right now, the Caymanian people want tangible solutions. They want actions. And the most important thing that we can do, recognizing that government itself is not the solution to every problem, is to give our people the tools to make sure that they can live with the dignity that they deserve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If no other member wishes to speak, I'll call on the mover of the bill to exercise his right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was wondering if we were ever going to get out of here today, but I'm glad that we've had a good lot of contribution to this very important bill. And that all the contributions thus far are all in alignment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honorable Leader of Opposition, the former Minister, the good member from Bontown West, but most importantly, my Parliamentary Secretary, member from West Bay West, for their contributions. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important, before I try to address some of the points of each particular contribution on the bill, to suggest that the overall discussion today has been on the implementation of programs and support and financing or labor infrastructure for the delivery of what the expected standard should be that we offer the good people of the Cayman Islands. But this motion is about the legislative process. And before I go on, I want to say how happy I am to, if there is such a thing as a benefit to the unfortunate departure of my former colleagues, they're still my colleagues, but former government colleagues, is that I've gotten the opportunity to get to know a group of people who are super awesome. I cannot stress that enough. They are a pretty cool squad. Sometimes I ask myself my question, for a member from West Bay South, how would you leave such an amazing squad? Honestly, they are wonderful, and I can understand why the fabric of this legislation has been furnished with so much focus on protection and support of our older persons. I will get to the supporting stakeholders like Ms. Alice Mayco, Ms. Lucille Seymour, and all those who helped with this a little bit later on. But I thought I would just take the opportunity to highlight that. So though this is about the legislative structure and the policy directives, much of today's discussion has been, or today's and Wednesday's discussion has been about the end product, which is the departmental level and the financial assistance to deliver programs. Mr. Speaker, in respect to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I'm seeing my words here that I wrote down, which I basically said, I could not agree with you anymore. Or, is that the right saying? Couldn't agree with you more. He pointed out all the relevant things that we in the government, both the remaining members of government, I'm certain those who recently left, the feel that we get in the community, the want for more hands-on approach from both the DCFS, Department of Children and Family Services, as well as the DFA, Department of Financial Assistance, because of the complexities of how our society has been developed, whether it's persons who don't have the ability for technology or the capabilities of understanding complex documents, having records, being able to get from one place to the other, that we need to be more hands-on to make sure we can offer the assistance to the people that we work so hard for. And the people who have created the amazing economy and society that we have today, because it's on their backs, their sweat, blood and tears, that allows us today and our children, their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to be offered with the amazing amenities that our social society have now. So I want to speak specifically to the Leader of Opposition and his points. Some of the things that he highlighted was the fact that there needs to be a reform and modernization of DCFS, and more community officers are needed to be more available in the community. And I agree with him wholeheartedly, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, at this moment, in the Department of Children and Family Services, I'm embarrassed to say this, but we only have one manager and 4 social workers in the Elderly Services Unit in the Department of Children and Family Services for the whole country. Now, I know those persons can never possibly deliver the need and the quality that we believe here in this Parliament believe that they should get with the population that we have. Now, I know we have heard about the population growth, and we also have heard about the expected retiree numbers, and even in the near future. So the members are all correct and was in unison about ensuring that we start to prioritize social support financially, morally, program-wise, staffing-wise, expansion of various different legislation. Mr. Speaker, you would have heard of the former minister talk about legislation that is also was in the works when he was there, and I am happy to report that I've been advised is still in the works, where it fills the other gaps other than the elderly and the children, which is those who are with disabilities and those who are within the adult support system from over 18 to before 65. Because there are people who are vulnerable who need support in that bracket. And just to give the Parliament an example of that, somebody leaving prison. What do they do after they leave prison? How do they get the support from a rehabilitation process? What do we do to assist them for if they don't have a place to live, or moral support to keep their mental capacity in the right positive place to reduce the rate of recidivism? Tongue tie. But Mr. Speaker, these other pieces of legislation will come in the future, and I'm proud to say that the department, the ministry, and the support staff is already working on that. Mr. Speaker, the other area of concern from the opposition leader was the challenges of the DFA, and more officers needed to be on the road, as well as the promotion of reporting contact information for all persons when they're in need. And he's right, sometimes people don't know where to go. I was saying to myself earlier, and I'm happy that my team says there's actually is promotional information on how to go about getting assistance already in the Department of DFA, but it seems that we are not doing a very good job of letting the public know about it. So that will take some working together, the PR, which is my area of expertise, Mr. Speaker, about how we do better at the PR, so persons, if they find themselves in need, what process they need to go through. Because, Mr. Speaker, asking for assistance is a very sensitive thing. You have, unfortunately, some people who've been a part of the system all through their life. Their parents were born into it, so it's like myself. When I was a kid, I always knew about social services, and and a social worker, because I grew up, unfortunately, on a more difficult side of the fence. So it was nothing to speak to social services. But there's some people in the world who came from a middle class or upper class society that unfortunately life has changed. And the morality or the sensitivity to go, oh my God, I now have to ask for help, is a very emotive thing. And they're already in a place of almost shame to ask, because it's almost as if there's a level of failure to ask for help. So you have to be there to help them and reach your hand out to them first and say, don't worry, it's okay, it's okay. That's why you pay your taxes. That's why your country is here for you. I will be here to help you. Come on, it's okay. We all get down sometime, and it's going to be all right. We're here for you. And we're going to make sure that you get the support you need until you get yourself back on your feet. But most people feel as if to say, when you're asking, it's almost like you're begging. And we got to change that narrative. But the narrative can't be changed overnight, because it takes more support to be willing to give. You heard the honorable member from Bontown West talk about it takes cash to care. That's why I'm so happy to hear him say that he's willing to support any administration and this administration for further borrowing, because he's right. It makes no sense to have a whole pile of credit if you're not willing to spend it to take care of your people. And I can't say, Mr. Speaker, that sometimes politics do get in the way, because we'll sit here and say, where is your financial management of the people's money? And we're borrowing too much. But you hear the honorable member say we have an extra 75% worth of credit limit. Now, by all means, I'm not saying just go into debt just for going into debt's sake. But if we sit here and recognize that the social welfare problems that we are having are not being adequately supported, why are we not willing? Because it's going to be costly. No doubt about that. We have, for one reason or another, not accepted the true reality of the needs of our people, and they have been left behind. We have. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I heard the honorable member say something, I didn't hear him crop. Because we got good. The honorable member was making a minor joke there to add on the fact, but we got good credit, and that makes no sense. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, I am 44 years old, and what I have seen in my 44 years is that we've turned this little small island state and turned it into a modern society, and didn't bring along the social structure and fiber and legislation and will along with it with a modern society. And then we are surprised when we see these social ills pop up before us. If you look at any modern society, they have proper social housing, they have various departments, they have much legislation, from all the ones that we're bringing here now to the ones that we'll be bringing soon. And we always pride ourselves to be a first world nation, but not willing to put the first world dollar figure next to it. And Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to, for those who are listening to these proceedings, I appreciate you doing your part to watch the democratic process. We are here to work for you. But the truth is, the Department of Children and Family Services and DFA get too much licks unnecessarily. I be honest with you, I don't know if I could do it. I couldn't work in their department. I couldn't do it. Because they're asked to do something that takes $10, but they're only given $1. And then we expect to say, well, our people deserve more. Well, spend more then. Spend more. That's why you see I had to bring in this honorable house on Tuesday a directive suggesting that even if we have to pay for hotel rooms, if a mother and her children or a father and their children are homeless, well, so be it. Pay for it. while others have come to our country, and we too, not only the foreigners, but we have those who have been gotten the benefit of the strong economy. Nice house, gated community, fancy car, BMW, big paycheck. I one of them. Things are good for me. The Lord have blessed me and this country. I got a truck, you read, and I got that much. On Ford truck, and that's a 2013. Thank you for highlighting that, Mr. Bush. But my point is, how do you think our people feel when the billion-dollar economy that we have, the perception that this is, oh, the little island in the Cayman Islands that is so nice, so pretty, infrastructure good, while the indigenous people who we are here to serve are usually the ones that are hurting the most, you know. I'm not saying the new Cayman Islands not hurting too, but the ones that hurt the most is the indigenous ones, the one that used to slap the mosquitoes to make sure that we implement dirt roads, to implement the light poles and the docks to create the little island Caribbean where they built the banks first. Those people have been left behind. We talk about it. We talk about technology, bringing technology in, and we know people don't have the reading capacity to do so, but they're obligated to go online and sign up. But that means then we have to support the department and say, you know what? Our people ain't there yet because we grew so fast that we still have some people who grew up in outside pit holes. So those persons, you can't tell them to go do X, Y, and Z to get services. And then after a level of frustration from the various different departments, you don't think they're frustrated. We're part of this barrage of, I need help, I need help, I need help. And you have people who are doing the work for 10 people because we haven't supported them. It's time to spend on Caymanians now. We talk about community make country. We talk about quality of life, and I'm not picking on the former premier. I'm just using the example of the abbreviation. It wasn't specific. It wasn't a political job. But we talk about quality of our people, but we won't spend the money necessary. I feel embarrassed when I go to the UK. When I hear Caymanians go and get loans to get a ticket just to get to the UK because they're going to get help. Because they know that they can go to their social welfare system. They know that somebody's going to fight that they get a job. They're going to have a roof over their head. Their children are going to be registered in school and have a good school uniform, and they're going to be okay. Most of the time, you know why they come back? Because they miss home. Not because they weren't getting the help. Because they miss home. We are a British overseas territory, and they have a strong social support system. But we don't have it. You know one thing that bothers me, Mr. Speaker? Everybody talks about, oh, this is what they do in the United Kingdom. This law, that law, and I'm even going to bring up the law that I'm thinking about. I'm going to leave that one out for today. But you bring this rule and that rule over there. But when it comes to the quality of service to people, nobody's shouting and screaming. I see that the Law Reform Commission talking about human rights, and this is what we are obligated to in the UK, and about other pieces of legislation, which is going to be very controversial shortly. I can promise you that. They pick up on those legislation, but they don't pick up on the legislation that affects the quality of life for our people. Everybody talks about the strong economy, financial services, and tourism. Where is the marches for the quality of life for our people? I hear the groups talking about the environment and don't do this road. Where is the group fighting for homelessness? Where it is? Mr. Speaker, I'm going to say this bill is about the legislative structure of things. I want to thank the former Deputy Premier. He was a stakeholder in that process. We are merely baton members carrying the journey of our development forward. The truth is, the people whose names supposed to be in the record books about these types of legislation and modernization ain't Mr. Andre E. Banks. It isn't Mr. Kenneth Bryan. It's supposed to be the deputy chief officer, policy advisors, the tribunal, the advocates, the stakeholders. They're the ones supposed to be taking the credit. You see, Mr. Speaker, I mean, take this opportunity to talk about the amazing team. I can go off track all over the place, and my team say, Minister, you're not on track, but I can get all the points out eventually. Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to meet some very smart, young, intelligent people. I wish I had them for 3.5 years. Oh, I'd been clicking. I had a good team in DOT, though, in ministry. Miss Ashlyn, I'm not even going to bother to pronounce the last name because I'm going to mess it up. Gabold, Ebanks, Miss Melissa Smith, Michelle Jackson, Shaniqui Seals, and Mahir. Oh, Mahir, I'm not going to mess up your last name. I'm not going to do that. Mr. Trevor Gibbs, Deputy Chief Officer, awesome dude. Everybody loves Miss Tamara. She's just one of the sweetest Caymans in the civil service. But this squad cares, Mr. Speaker. I'm not asking you that. I'm telling you they care. Because I'm a straight shooter, and I've challenged them, and I see it in their heart. I see it in their eyes, and that's a strong squad. Thank you, sir. To bring this part of the things. This is only one equation. This is the legislative equation. And they've done a good job. And the former minister did his part to support them, to get them to drafting, to get it to cabinet. Cabinet did its part. I am now here taking over the baton to get here. But that's the upper level part. You can have all the laws you want. The people are not going to feel the law. They need to feel the money. They need to feel the program. They need to feel the support. This law is about protections. Protecting, creating the legislative framework. It's not about the application of support. And that's what everybody in here were talking about over the last 2 days. It's about the application of support. So, Mr. Speaker, outside of the former minister who spoke about some parts specifically in the bill, most of it has been about what we haven't done and what we need to do. And I'm in full agreement. So as I've said earlier today, and I think in previous debate, I think most of us are going to come back. There's a lot of people out there who want our seats. I'm not sure if they all understand the commitment, the hard work it took for you to get in this room, but some of them are going to learn. I thought I knew it all too when I first ran. Right? Mr. Speaker, you know what I'm talking about. I thought I knew it all too. And plenty of them are going to come, and that's a part of the learning process. That has to happen because the next group of leaders have to come. Right? But I believe most of us are going to be back here. But what I recognize, and I'm happy about, Mr. Speaker, is most of us accept that we have not done enough for those who are most vulnerable. We can't continue to brag and boast about how wonderful the Cayman Islands is when we're not willing to spend the money it's necessary to take care of those who are most vulnerable. We can't. We should be shamed. Shamed. Let me read that part again. It makes me want to cry, honest to God. One manager and 4 social workers for 84,000 people. You think that they can care for our seniors and that's the department that we support? Come on, man. Mr. Speaker, we do have to strengthen our commitment, and it has to come down to money, because no matter how you check it, it costs. It's costly in this jurisdiction. Costs from staff, the labor it takes to pay people to do this work. It costs to put buildings in various jurisdictions, meaning districts. You know what the cost of building is? It takes costs to give support to the Department of Financial Services, because Cayman is expensive. The whole notion, and this is a little something for the news to come up, but I will be examining that $3,000 limit, because I want to know who is surviving on $3,000 in Cayman with the quality of standard that we expect. And the department is suggesting that if you make more than $3,000, we can't help you. I mean, my light bill, and I got me, my wife, and my 2 kids, is $1,000. And I have the most efficient AC unit. I got insulation. I got everything that you can think of to try to be energy efficient. After the member from Newlands came in, he made sure everybody in our group were efficient light bulbs, efficient this and efficient that. That's all he talked about. So I went and fixed my house. Light bill's still the same. So if that, just think a common family, or God forbid you're single and you got 3 children, how? I mean, we got to fix the cost of living. It's not as easy as 1, 2, 3, but until we figure out what we're going to do about that, how can we justify saying that $3,000, if you make more than $3,000, we can't give you $1 for help? I mean, that is an example, Mr. Speaker, of what we're talking about with that lack of support. All right, let me get off the soapbox and get back to the concerns raised. Mr. Speaker, I was talking about the concern of PR and promotion of information. The Department of Financial Assistance do have a video that they have created trying to explain to people, for those who are first-timers, because it is a very sensitive thing. I think that's where I started, my track went off from there. I never got back to it. About how to apply. What are the common things a person would apply for? Can I pay my rent? Can I get rental assistance? Can I get assistance for light and water, or food, or medicine, insurance? How do I go about doing that? And to be honest with you, the true need of help for the elderly, as well as those who are vulnerable for one reason or another, that should be a constant thing. It's sad. It might show a reflection of how many people actually need it, but we need to get that out there. But also to let the public know that if you need help, this is a place that you can go to get it. This is a video that explains how to do it, because we have online services, or here's a telephone number, like what the leader of opposition said, that they can call and somebody will always answer the other line. Because to be honest with you, Mr. Speaker, it is an emergency. Somebody got to be able to answer, because there are people that we are serving. Not all of them, most of the people that actually need the help are usually not functional in technological advancement. They're still accustomed to, I remember my mother, before she got into the smartphone, she said, "Kenneth, you're Instagramming, you're Facebooking? You're Facebooking, eh?" And I said, "Mama, you want me to get you one of them touchscreen phones?" She said, "Nope, all I want is a phone with the green button and the red button and the 0 to 9. But I tricked her one Christmas and I bought her a smartphone. I said, "Well, Mama," and I gave you another phone. And then we got her hooked up with Facebook, WhatsApp, and it's been downhill ever since. Can't get her off now. But not everybody is there, Mr. Speaker. And we still, if there is one Caymanian who don't understand that space should not be disenfranchised in any capacity from having that hand reached out to them and say, Caymanian, you worked hard. This is your land, and we're going to be here for you. You don't have to always be technologically advanced because we cover everybody. Here you go. But we can't say the hand is out now. Not when you only have one manager and 4 social workers. That's why they can't be out in the community. So we can't ask DCFS and the support team to go out and look for the seniors in every neighborhood if we're not willing to staff them. We can't ask DFA to process these payments quicker if they're doing the workload for something for 4 persons for each individual one. And we can't ask them to give out money if we're not willing to fund them for the money for the levels of need that is out there. It just simply has to be supported financially. Mr. Speaker, apologize, I'm just trying to get myself in order here about what else he was saying. Oh, the housing repair program. Mr. Speaker, I think that my very capable parliamentary secretary highlighted this tremendously. And it has to do with those seniors, because I don't want to make it seem like I'm going too off track, but most of the conversation was so wide scope for social development rather than just the older person's bill that I'm forced to respond to all the comments. He is 100% right. I think the Honorable Leader of Opposition and the PS for the ministry highlighted words bureaucracy, hurdles. And I got to admit they are 100% right. Because by the time you get the approval to fix somebody's house, you spent probably the same amount of money in checking to see if you can spend the money on what you need to spend the money on. I mean, time is money, you know. And I really, this is a more internal thing because what has transpired, Mr. Speaker, and I wanted to vent this for a long time, so let me get it out. What I saw has happened in this country over the last 30 decades. Can't be 30 decades. That wouldn't be good. 30 years, 3 decades, is there seemed to be a transition from an old practical system of just get it done, the old Cayman way. The older politicians, the likes of Mr. Bush, the likes of the Trumans, Jim Bordens, and the older ones that were here before me. And it was, the old service was, boy, the minister said get it done, you get it done. That's how it used to be. And then somebody with this magical idea said, oh, you can't allow a politician to be involved in that. We need to have these checks and balances in place because of political corruption. Now, granted, I'm not saying that that's not the case, that couldn't be happening. But you put so much bureaucracy in place, now you can't get anything done. On the thought that you got to put these things in place just to prevent, or not just to prevent, because you got to stop politicians. Any crooked politician, you can catch them up and lock them up. Show me the key too. But you have to be practical with your ability to give the support to the people in a timely process. When I think about the housing situation, and unfortunately I'm just starting to get accustomed to what we do from a social housing support system because we have a TP for that. But I've already got debriefed on that, and God knows that's just as bad as the other process. Thank God the minister for affordable housing has made sure to try to loosen up some of those things, the hurdles that were in the way, for him to actually get some houses done. Because he was screaming about it the whole time. But helping the elderly, you got to get 15,000 quotes. You got to analyze the quotes, give them a point system for the quotes. Then you got to send out the ministry to get the approval for the quotes. And then you got to find out when the worker is ready to do the work. And God forbid, if you don't get it done in time to get it approved, when he's actually available to do the work, or he will work on another contract. And then before you know it, the person did. You don't need to fix the house again. Now you hear any foolishness like that? Mr. Speaker, we have to do better at that if we care. And you know what? The next administration, I hope to be a part of it, Mr. Speaker, with the Lord's blessings, the goodwill of the Georgetown Central people and other members. I hope to be back here, and I hope to be on this side. Jay, you hear that? He said he want me, you, and Isaac, and Mr. Bush, and everybody to come over one time. Mr. Speaker, I hope that whoever comes back to this honorable house is willing to stand up, not against, stand up to any of this bureaucracy and change it. And that includes if we have to speak to the DG, who is responsible or responds to the governor, because a lot of this stuff, I hear that we actually created it ourselves, to be honest with you. But we need to cut it out because we're not helping our people. We can't get to them. Yeah, well, follow them, yeah. Tell you one thing, if somebody jump off a bridge, I know I'm not jumping off with them. Mr. Speaker, I hope that we can get that resolved, and I want to give those who are already in the application process of getting repairs for seniors within the ministry housing program the comfort of knowing this. I'm doing my hardest to try to get through the hurdles that got in the way, and I have a very strong PS behind me who don't take any BS, even though he's my PS, to try to get some stuff done before the dissolution of this house. But there's a very short period of time, but hopefully we can get it done. Mr. Speaker, I heard about the housing or the availability of housing for seniors in their golden years. And we talked about golden age homes and so forth. He's right. That's probably one of my biggest concerns. Because again, I go back to my age, 44, and I'm certain I remember seeing the Pines home when I was probably about 9, when I used to live in Windsor Park. So the Pines have been there that long, and I know they did a little addition onto it, but it wasn't much. And the population was probably about 50,000, maybe 40-something thousand back in the early 90s, late 80s. So you can tell that we are not planning for the growth that we're getting, either intentionally or unintentionally. Because I must say, it got to be unintentionally, because I don't know how this population got to 85, 86,000 so quick. I swear I remember coming into politics and the Speaker of the House, who was then the Premier, was saying we were using the figures of 65,000 and we've increased by a third. How it happened, I don't even know. It happened in the blink of an eye. It doesn't sound good because I'm a part of a government who has been in power for the last 3.5 years. But it's happened. And we hear the projections of how many people are going to need help from the honorable member from Bontown West. And that we're going to need more senior care facilities, whether privately or government. And I think it's time that we have to start incentivizing. There's old homes. Let me tell you something. Children, they're in the middle age, are normally the ones who start to take care of their parents as they get older. And the kids of this modern time are no longer buying big houses where mom and daddy come live with me. Because what you have today coming up is more modern Caymanians. They don't need all that land. We're not planting no mango trees or no suckers or anything like that. Which, boy, if you can do that, if you're listening, do it, because food security is a real thing. But most of them are more modern. They're looking at apartments. They don't have the space. 2-bedroom, little small living room, because they're never at home anyway. They're always working, they're always out. They're not going to space for the old school Caymanian way. where we had a spare room, big piece of land. Your grandmother stayed with you. She always outside underneath the tree, planting this or picking that or doing out the flowers. There's no space for the family home as the modern Cayman develops. So there's going to be a need for more elderly care facilities. Not only that, the burden of cost for kids, for young adults, I mean not young adults, mature adults, to take care of their family, their senior age, is becoming so burdensome they can't be around to do it because they got working 3 jobs. So they're forced to say, come to social services, say, boy, can you put my mama in Golden Age home? Or can you put them in the Pines? But we don't have the space. So I think the PS was 100% right about the lack of senior care facilities in the country. And we have to do a better job of either building some, and government can't do everything, I know that, but we can do incentives. Matter of fact, what was Mr. Seymour's mother's name? I think there was a, huh? Miss Ellen? No. There's a Caymanian who has been successful in his own right, congratulations to him, and wanted to build a seniors care facility in the name and honor of his mother. We should be begging him to build that right now. Matter of fact, we're supposed to be giving him duty waivers and incentives as much as we possibly can so he can do it right away. Matter of fact, we're about 5 years behind on the need for the care. But no, you know what we do? I'm going to tell you what we do. And the members who left, I don't know what we're talking about. The only people going to get out of this is the opposition. We make hurdles in the way so the people can't do it. I don't know what I'm talking about. Place supposed to be already started right now. That's what we do. I hope I am a part of a government that has the cojones to stand up and say this got to get done next time around. Not the chatter. Anyway, let me stop there with that one. Mr. Speaker, I agree that we have to have a better working relationship in respect to services of care. This is another thing that the Honorable Leader of Opposition and the Honorable Parliamentary Secretary spoke about in respect to getting care for health. You hear the PS talk about Seneco saying, well, you got to pay for the insurance first, or pay for the medication first, then we reimburse you. When you are asking for the help for the insurance in the first place, so we didn't get the money to pay for the medication. Now, I do accept, and I'll give this Honorable House the commitment as Minister that I'll be looking at this regime because I saw the problem from before, even with the former Minister of Health. The concern of the relationship between Seneco, HSA, DFA, and DCFS. Now, that relationship not working good. And it's supposed to be seamless. You go into the department at DFA to apply to see if you're qualified to get the health, the qualify from a financial perspective to see if you're deserving of it. Then we need to send it to the hospital for the hospital to decide whether you get it. And then you got to send it to Seneco. Seneco got to approve it. And then Seneco don't tell back DFA that it approved. And by the time the person called back to find out that it approved, half the insurance gone. You know how often I've heard that? That by the time it approved, or by the time the information gets back to the applicant who's been approved for insurance, that you basically wasted 3 months of premiums. It's ludicrous. And I can promise you, I've given the directive to my Deputy Chief Officer, who I must say is a very strong, capable person. I don't think I've given him a task yet he hasn't completed. And I'll explain the hotel thing to you, former ministers, shortly. And it's because of that good man. But I have given him the indication that that's one of the areas that we have to address. Because you know what? DFA is getting the licks for it. DCFS also gets licks for it, when sometimes has nothing to do with them at all. And I feel bad. I remember sometimes I call NAU myself and say, what you mean? Tell me, man, this application been in 4 months, you can't tell them they got insurance or not? When come to find out, they've been 2 professional civil servants. Yes, Minister, we're working on it. We're just waiting on some other approvals, blah, 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 blah. Come find out a whole lot by HSA. HSA don't want to approve it. Anyway, I think we're going to fix that. I think that's something we can functionally fix. Could be complicated, I don't know. But we're going to dive into it. But unfortunately, with this, all this new responsibility, plus tourism and Christmas and campaigning, boy, they left me I don't know if it was set up. They probably did this so I can have more work so they can campaign against me. I don't know. But I promised to address that. Mr. Speaker, the former minister highlighted that maybe as the Minister for Tourism, I was able to get something accomplished through the hotels to allow the Department of Financial Assistance to find a place for persons who are vulnerable with children in emergency circumstances. Mr. Speaker, I had nothing to do with it. So it's nothing to do with me. And the former minister said it was difficult. I'm assuming he was informed, because I know he's not out there going to the hotels himself, but I'm assuming that he was informed that the hotels wasn't willing to do that then. And maybe just by happenstance that now that I'm minister, that there's hotels want to do it. And I want to put that in perspective, because I don't want to make it seem like he wasn't doing something and I did something different. What I was made to understand is the reputation of DFA, better known as NAU, reputation with the hotels isn't the best. For a number of reasons, not necessarily for the fault of the working people within DFA, or NAU as we know it. Nothing to do with them, but because of the clients and the history of persons doing damage to property and so forth. So they didn't want to deal with payments from there. And I think it's because of the hard work of my deputy chief officer, and the request for assistance came from the ministry level, where the minister said, listen, we're going to pay for this. We're going to get this thing done, because the mandate was under my watch. I don't want to see one story in any news that as Kenneth Bryan was the Minister of Social Development, that any child is homeless on his watch. I know what it felt like, Mr. Speaker. I knew what it's like to be homeless. Ain't gonna happen on my watch. You gonna pay for it. So, my deputy chief officer understood the directive, got it done. Here's the solution that I have, and here's where my discrepancy is, and I think I share a different view than the former minister. We recognized that the hotels weren't willing to give rooms to people who are getting services from NAU, now known as DFA. We know that people were having problems finding homes, either based on the fact of the reputation, or didn't want children, or the housing market was limited. We know that. What did we do about it? Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, but that falls squarely on the minister's lap, because here's what Kenneth Bryan is currently doing and will do. Immediately, if we got to go rent 10 apartments, remember now there's a difference between transitional apartments and somebody renting for 6 months or a year. These are rooms, even if they got to be empty waiting for somebody to be homeless, so be it. But that way we don't have to have the expense of the hotel, which is $300, $400, $500 a night. So it goes into the ratio of cost perspective. So you go get a block of them, that is a transition. So we know that we can see it almost every other week. There'll be an application to NAU, and I got a place to go. And there's a process of, well, you need to find a place. And there's always at least 2 to a month worth of time before they find a place. So what we do, let's take out the children for a minute. What about a woman? You want her sleeping on the road? You know what? I've heard women actually starting to, unfortunately, give up their bodies to be able to survive in this country. How hard it is. Sad. But my point is, Mr. Speaker, to solve the transitional problem, I know that there is work that the former minister and the ministry team was working on with John Silvers. Very complicated. There's other government properties. But I don't believe in excuses, Mr. Speaker. You know the problem is there. You know the sensitivities of children sleeping. Fine it. I don't want excuse. If you got build a container, make sure that they are safe. Because nobody want to hear the excuse when you heard that a mother and 2 children were on the beach because they had nowhere else to go, and a predator came and raped them and killed them. What are they going to say to them after that? When we are given the constitutional responsibility by order of the governor on behalf of the king, you are now responsible for social development. I take that role very seriously. And we're obligated to find a solution. And if you're not going to money, come down here and you say, Madam Minister of Finance, I need money. And I know she gives it to him. Because when he came the last time, he got $100 million worth. $100 million? I need to quote that figure right. But I know majority of the money went to his request. So it's not like she didn't support every time he asked. Matter of fact, the last sitting of finance that we had in here, most of the money was going to that ministry. So it's not like the solution couldn't be found. There should be no reason. There should have been a story on the headlines. We should have had somewhere for the person to stay. Anyway, I'm done with that one. I wanted to get that one off my chest. All right, Mr. Speaker. The former minister also highlighted the point of agreeing that there needs to be social housing and that we have differences of opinion from way before when he was a chief officer and I was in the opposition about how to do social housing, whether to do them collectively, and which I am in support of, because it's a holistic way where the other services that come with persons who have the need for social housing usually have some other social issues as well, whether it's counseling, whether it's job search hunt officers, social worker, whatever it is, all could be housed in one location. But you heard the Honorable former minister say that there's problems that come with that. And I think it's the thinking of not putting too many people in one location that comes with some of the social ills. And I think the term that they try to use is not to create ghettos or slums or whatever they want to call it. But I believe, Mr. Speaker, we do not have the luxury from a financial position to create social housing all over the different place. The cost of land alone, look at town. So I'm a Georgetowner. We have social housing problems in Georgetown. Are we expected to build 20 different locations across town? Or, better off, would it not make more sense to say, we're going to buy a lot of 2 acres and build a 3-story apartment complex that has 52 bedrooms in it that is owned by the government and managed through a social structure framework of transition housing or need for a period of time or qualifications that if you're staying here you have to be registered for work and all of these other systems like the United Kingdom does. I know it's going to be cheaper to do it that way. So yes, we do disagree in that approach. And the other part about it, Mr. Speaker, we had the opportunity within this term to purchase some of those options. I recall, where there was an option for us to purchase, I think it was 50, if my memory serves me well, but at one block at the, what do they call the Little Bits? What are big apartments called again? How is that, Minister? Lakes, the lakes that came up for sale. The lakeside. Thank you very much, Madam Member from Savannah. 100 blocks. And yes, so we had a number of options available to us. And if we had those available, I am almost certain if we bought them, you hear the good member from Bontown West talk about, we got all this credit, we should use it, buy it. I know it'll be cheaper than the cost, because I tell you one thing, some of the places I see I'm renting for $1,200, $1,800, I wouldn't even pay them 7 cents to live in them. But people are forced to live in them. I think it's, I'll leave that there. Mr. Speaker, let's go back to the importance of finding more affordable housing solutions, as the good member of West Bay South said. I agree. But I know this. It's not because the Honorable Minister of Housing isn't trying. Now, I can't say I wasn't in government when the former Minister of Housing was there, my good friend and cousin, Honorable Joseph Hugh. But I can tell you this, I've witnessed Joanne Ebanks' hard work in planning. I almost see him getting invited to the DG about bureaucracy. You see him express himself in this parliament. I know he has a reputation in the Cayman Islands right now. And most people talk about it, of his commitment to trying to get things done. And if the hurdles wasn't in the way, they would have been done. I almost remember every other week there's another post of these same kind of, what do you call it? What kind of houses did you call them again, former minister? Modular houses. Every 2 weeks, the Honorable Minister would post something in our government group chat about modular housing. You remember, guys? Boy, we got to try this. It can be more affordable. A Cayman can have a house for $50,000. We can do this. Take government land and boom, 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 boom. As a matter of fact, I go and see if it's in my history, in my WhatsApp. That's all he did. He cared about housing. He wanted Cayman in housing. And nobody can tell me he don't want to change. What I find is the biggest problem that we have here as legislators, no matter what side you're on, is the bureaucracy from doing it. Everybody see the houses, the container houses, and how nice they look. Some of them, and the biggest argument they're going to use is, well, they're not hurricane rating. Well, I tell you what, the engineering is getting as good that those ones are now hurricane rated too. So they're not got that as an excuse. But somebody's holding up something. Maybe it's because they don't want they don't like the look of it. I tell you what, tell that to a person who's homeless. You think they care how it look? They just want a roof over their head. Mr. Speaker, I agree with the former minister about modular housing, but I want the public to know it's not because of the efforts of the housing minister why it's not done. But we are not going to make no exceptions or no excuses. We are going to have to fight a battle of bureaucracy before we even take on the battle of the many different issues that we have, whether it's housing, whether it's health, whether it's roads, whether it's social development, because there's too much bureaucracy getting in the way of us helping our people. Every single person that talks here talks about a social commitment to the people and what we want. So I don't think that there's not a will to do it. Why is it the houses wasn't built in the last administration? I don't think it's because the opposition didn't want to do it. And I know it's not because this government didn't want to do it, but there's a reason for why things take so long. I remember, Mr. Speaker, when you used to say, If you want to get anything done, you better get 2 terms. Oh, I understand that fully now, sir. And it shouldn't be that way. Mr. Speaker, the former minister said something about immigration and why our government never got up and speak yesterday. I didn't think that was necessary. But it is still the season. And the context of what he's meant was that, we have all these issues that are affecting social development, and it's as a result of the immigration concerns and the growth of the population and the number of persons becoming Caymanian and being dependent on the system of welfare. So I get where he was coming with the context and the scope of the debate. But he didn't need to say, and no government member got up and said anything. We spoke with our vote. The member that presented the bill is a member of this government. He's still here. So we spoke with our vote. And to be honest with you, if I never asked for a division, I bet you the same member would have probably said, oh, he didn't support it. But I tell you what, we're all on record now. So that's the answer to the immigration question. Mr. Speaker, what I have in my hand, just for the public's listening here, because I think most people know how I feel about immigration, but I respect collective responsibility, and I will. But I have to respect my colleague, the Minister for Immigration. Until that changes, I respect collective responsibility, and I'm learning the very principles of mature politics. But the part that bothers me is this. This is a document that I have here that we've been working on together as a government, including those 4 that left, that has 1, 12, 17, 19, I think it's 21 pieces of changes and 2 changes to the regulation. No, 3, 4, sorry, my apologies. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 10 changes to regulation. We've been working on it for probably about a year now, probably a little longer than that, about immigration changes. And that's why I eased up on the minister and say, all right, we're comfortable with this. So it's not like the former minister don't know that, because he was right there. So don't pretend and tell the public about the government didn't get up and say nothing about immigration. It's because the minister plans to bring something. We've said so, you were there. I'm not satisfied with how much we've done, but don't paint the picture wrongly. It ain't fair. Mr. Speaker, this bill, I do believe, is an improvement, and I want to thank the former minister for his hard work. He worked very hard from the legislative and policy perspective, with the support of amazing staff members. And they're the hard workers. They are. Matter of fact, most times as government, and I think, Premier, I think you would recall this, is the politicians, sorry, my apologies, Premier. Mr. Speaker, I think you would agree with me here. Politicians get a lot of credit for a lot of things. Come out and shine all this policy that I drafted in the legislation, and none of us not doing it. It's great civil servants in the background, great policy advisors, great legal drafters, great stakeholder involvement. They're supposed to be the persons getting the credit, that do all the hard work. I'll give credit for the stage of the journey that the minister did. Took it from his team, guided them as to the government's policy, and this is a reflection of that. Good. They gave the knowledge, because he's a lawyer, but he isn't a social welfare advisor. Just like me in tourism, I didn't come from a tourism background. I take my advice from my tourism team. And I can't take the credit for my director, Rosa Harris' hard work. I always respect and say, I am pleased on behalf of the hard-working team of, because they're the professionals, we're the policymakers. So, former minister, thank you for what you've done, and I'm not going to try to take any credit for much of what I've done, but I am honored to now lead this new group. And I think you guys are going to do some amazing things, as long as you have the support and the programs and the resources, because I know that your heart and mind is in the right place. And I knew that from when we went through each one of these bills, from adoption to children to maintenance to seniors. I can see that you were thinking about the things that really affect the people. I'm assuming that you studied for that. I'm proud of you. Cayman has a lot to look forward to in respect to the continued growth and change in our approach. But that could be any minister, because the hard work is in the ministry. You deserve the credit. Ms. Lucille, through you, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say thank you directly to our former member of this Honorable House. She's been a driving force and a beacon, a lighthouse for focus on the issue. It's almost like a sailor trying to get back home to Spot Bay and looking on the bluff to look at the lighthouse and say, oh, yeah, over here, keep focused on home. Keep focused on home. And every time the government or ministry or staff try to stray off track, she was there. Remember, seniors in this country, don't forget them. Don't forget them. And if you try to forget them, she'll wake up and knock on the door and say, oi, you forget about the seniors or what? Because she don't play. And I'll be honest with you, I hope one day that her statue is out in front of this building on the hard work and commitment that she's done for those who are most vulnerable, because she deserves it. And let it be first said here today, I hope I can honor you before the Lord calls you home, Ms. Lucille. You're amazing. Let me just say the names of all of those, particularly the legal drafters who help with that part of things before we wrap up. Mr. Speaker, I spoke about my ministry team. I also want to speak just for the name of the individuals within the Department of Children and Family Services. I think most of us know about Ms. Paulinda Mendoza Williams, who's the director. And Ms. Director, I'm going to get you more support this week. I'm going to get you more support. Last thing I do. Mr. Real Roberts, Deputy Director, hard-working, straightforward shooter. And he'll look at me in the face and say, Minister, you want X? I need Y. And I appreciate that, because that's the kind of approach we're going to need to do the things that I know you guys want to do. Ms. Cassandra Ferron, the social worker manager. I don't know how you do all the excess pressure you get. Having to be the person who is solely responsible for social care for seniors with such a small team. But I pray God continues to give you and your team all the strength you need, because you do such an amazing job to care for our people. But you need more support. To the legislative drafting department, Ms. Myrtle Bandit, Cheryl Niblet, the legal steering committee from the chair of the ministry, Ms. Deborah Webb Sibley, and obviously my cool and awesome new DCO, Mr. Gibbs, and SPA, I'm going to screw this name up so bad, Petkovic. I did all right? All right, that was good, okay. Representatives from the Council of Older Persons. Of course, we highlighted Ms. Lucille. I just want to say, by the way, she's from Georgetown Central, and I'm going to bias here, but she's that awesome because of where she's from. But we got some good people from all over Cayman Islands, like the amazing Miss Alice May Coe, who is a fighter. Sometimes we're at odds on the different things, but I would love to have her on my side, fighting for the causes I fight, because she will fight to the end. So, Miss Alice May Coe, thank you for your continued commitment to the Council of Older Persons. Also, Miss Annie Moulton, Mr. John E. Banks, and additional members, Linda Mitchell, Rosie Whitaker-Miles, and Stephanie Azan. Additional consultation has been conducted with all of the external community partners in the Cayman Islands, and we commit to continue the work that started even before this administration went through the former minister, now in my hands of responsibility, and this government, and we will continue to give the support that is necessary. With that being said, Mr. Speaker, I think there is a consensus and support in respect to the legislative elements of it. So I'm happy, I hope that all members are willing to vote yes, so we can get this older persons legislation reformed, amended, and more improved for our seniors in the Cayman Islands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled Older Persons Amendment Bill 2024 be given a second reading. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The Older Persons Amendment Bill 2024 has been given a second reading. Madam Premier, we have reached the hour of interruption. I am entirely in your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the adjournment of this Honorable House until 10 a.m. on Monday morning.
The question is that the House do now adjourn until 10 a.m. on Monday morning. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. I believe the ayes have it. The House is adjourned until 10 a.m. on Monday morning.